Well, I went way over my macros on Saturday, and today is Wednesday, which is my weigh-in. Did it mess me up? Let's find out. All right, so we've all got those days when you go way over on your macros. It's going to happen to everybody because sometimes you plan to have your day kind of structured out. Yeah, I'm going to have this breakfast and this lunch, and everything's going to go according to plan. And then things come up, and then you go out on the town, and you're hanging out with friends, and you're like, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy the night because I know that I can make up for this later in the week. So that happened to me, and that happened on Saturday. I was going about my day like I normally did, and then I ran into one of my friends downtown. He's like, hey, I'm meeting up with a group of people, and you should totally come out with us. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that. And so I did that, and involved in that night was the drinking of a lot of mezcal. However you say it. It's like extra good tequila is a good way of putting it. But anyway, mezcal, tacos, and we even ate at a French restaurant, which had amazing whipped butter spread for the bread that they kept bringing out. And I enjoyed it. And just a fun little side note on all that, it never felt like a binge whatsoever. Because a lot of people are like, oh, if you're eating a lot more than you're supposed to on one day, isn't that a binge? No, not really. A binge is more of like a psychological thing where you have these periods of extreme restriction. And because you feel like you've been deprived of something, the minute you get a taste of it, you just can't stop. You can't turn that motor off. You just go, you just try to eat everything. But this is totally different. You can go over on your targets without it really being considered a binge. Total aside right there. So let's talk about how far I really went over on my targets that day. On my carbs, I was over by 126 grams. And on fat, I was over by 82 grams. So that's pretty far over where your targets are supposed to be. I mean, it's not unusual to be like 10, 15, or 20 over. But when you start going that high over, that's like, uh-oh, I think I messed up. But fortunately, I had my moving targets turned on, so I knew that my targets were going to be dropped for really the next couple days. And that ended up happening. But it was all right. So anyway, going that far over, and also keep in mind that I was drinking alcohol and estimating a lot of the stuff that I had out. And so when you know that you're going really far over on your macros and you want to estimate, there's kind of a tendency to look at your estimations with rose-colored glasses on because you know that the higher you go over, the more your targets are going to get dropped. So I was trying to be as honest as possible with my estimations, which means that it was probably pretty accurate, and that was about how bad that I really messed up. But I'm going to show you why it wasn't that big of a problem. With the moving targets feature turned on, the next day my macros were dropped and my calories were very low. And if I had just approached it like I would any other day, I probably would have been out of all my carbs and fats by about 11 a.m. And the rest of the day would not have been very fun because once you start eating, that's when your appetite hormones really start to kick in. But if you employ intermittent fasting, it's a great tool for appetite control. So I knew going into that day, I've got basically nothing compared to what I'm used to work with here for food. So I'm not going to eat until like 3. And when I do start eating, I'm going to try to cook some recipes that are very high volume. So I actually went onto our recipes section in the blog and cooked some of Kate's recipes. I made this breakfast hash that was low fat, low carb, high protein, and it was just absolutely amazing. But I was eating that breakfast hash, which had really high volume to it, when I did start eating for that day. And then by the end of it, I never really felt hungry or deprived, but that brought my averages a lot back closer to where they were supposed to be. And then since I had 3 days between Saturday and my check-in this morning, that allowed me to keep working towards getting those averages right in line with where they're supposed to be. And because progress really is about your total intake for the week, averages are all that truly matters. So what ended up happening? I'll tell you what happened. I went down 3.6 pounds. And that got me down to 192.4. And so at 192.4, that puts me at almost a total of 12 pounds of weight loss since I started fat loss. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Feeling pretty ripped. But yeah, it's the whole thing, Ripped for Rugby, the series. So my play has actually gotten a lot better. My scoring rate is 5 times higher. It feels a lot better to run. And, if I go to the park and take my shirt off, I'm like, oh, this feels kind of good. So anyway, things are working pretty well, but there's just a few takeaways that we can really put into this as for like what you can do if you really blow over on your macros. So I'm going to erase this real quick. You know what? We're going to keep it simple. We're going to break it down to 2 things. So the first thing that you're going to do if you want to see progress is intermittent fast. So what that means is you're waiting to start eating until later in the day and you're giving yourself a small eating window. So what's really popular would be like noon to 6 or noon to 8 or 2 to 7, 2 to 8. You basically just have a smaller compressed amount of time where you're fitting all of your food into it. And like I said before, just super effective for controlling your appetite, especially when you have a lower day. So using intermittent fasting is going to help you out a bunch if you know that your calories are being cut from some kind of moving target adjustment or for whatever other reason. And the second thing that you can do is have high volume foods. So think about it. If you're having carbs, for example, you could go through 70 grams of carbs by eating a pack of Pop-Tarts and you're going to be hungry in 30 minutes because there's basically nothing there. Or you could have 70 grams of carbs coming from sweet potatoes and kind of feel stuffed because that's like a very big sweet potato worth of carbs. So think about that. Your food choices matter a lot. You want to have stuff that has a lot of fiber and a lot of moisture content to it as well. So that way you're getting more weight and more volume of material in your stomach. And if you're having more complex carbs, it takes a little bit longer for your body to break them down. And there's a lot of other things that get involved here that can help you control your appetite. So having intermittent fasting and high volume foods put in place, it can make that makeup day where you're trying to bring your averages back in line with where they're supposed to be. That'll help you out a ton here. So if you think that you really messed up and just because you went way over your target macros on Wednesday, it's the end of the world and you're feeling down, let me tell you what, buddy, you take that frown and you turn it upside down because you're going to be making progress. See you next time.